Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. You can't make it up. The sound was muted. Today is Monday. It is December the 8th, and we are going to have a very interesting show for you. We're going to cover a whole bunch of topics. First of all, I booked an interview with the co-founder of Patriot Protect. It's Skip Holtz, and so he's going to be doing a guest segment with us talking about cybersecurity. This is something that needed to be done anyway. So we were talking about that. It actually kind of coincides nicely because there was a data breach for the folks that run DoorDash. And DoorDash, I think, is going to be a very prominent thing that you hear about in the next week or two. We're also going to talk about my friend Steve Friend, who was on a viral podcast we did on Friday, shared out by a member of Congress. And he got a call right afterwards, a letter as well, saying that he's fired. Steve Friend, FBI whistleblower, patriotic, true blue author, just all around stud. In fact, he called me today while he was on his run. He's like, yeah, I got another hour worth of jogging right now. Had two things happen this weekend, both Friday and then on Sunday, that are completely and ridiculously illogical. Number one, he was fired from his attorneys. The attorneys said they will no longer represent him, despite the fact that they highlighted in their letter firing him that the FBI is in material breach of the agreement that the DOJ made with him over 100 days ago. They still owe him back pay. They still owe him a clearance. They still owe him a gun and a badge and a bunch of leave and all kinds of other material things, health insurance, you name it. And his attorneys decided to walk away. It turns out his attorneys are part of the problem, and they have been for quite a while. I have never had them represent me, and I got into a little bit of a thing with them. We're going to expose some of the dirty laundry of Empower Oversight, the so-called whistleblower protection firm that basically exists to protect the deep state from people like Steve Friend, from myself. And they sort of only work in so much as you're willing to go along and play ball with the approved narratives. I'm going to show you who the guys are. I'm going to tell you why I don't like them. I've never liked them. I think they are gutless pussies. And I said that to their faces. Well, at least I said it on the phone. I actually mentioned that I thought that people like them should be hung by the neck from the 14th Street Bridge and then waited until their corpses rotted and fell into the Potomac to be swept out to sea and never found again. Because people like them who go out there and operate ostensibly as good guys and then do exactly the opposite and enforce the status quo are the reason why this country is screwed. So I have some strong feelings about this. I also feel pretty strongly about the fact that they tried to ask me for $25,000 that you, our audience, our Twitter audience, and the people that follow me over on social media raised in individual 13,000+ personal donations to keep Marcus Allen and Garrett O'Boyle afloat when those guys had no income and were indefinitely suspended forever. And not only did Steve Friend get fired from his deep state attorneys, he also got told, I'm told, by his wife, because we don't talk. That would be totally inappropriate for a current FBI employee who doesn't have any of the authorities of an FBI employee. Yeah. Steve Friend's wife lets me know that Steve was called back into the office despite having no responsibilities, despite not having a background check, and despite not actually having any duties to do as an FBI employee. He's supposed to get picked up shortly and then sit in the Daytona RA, which is a satellite office, while his boss hangs out in Jacksonville and does nothing. They literally saw the podcast that we did on Friday, got rid of his attorneys and representation, and then pulled him into the office to do nothing in a retaliatory act that is, in fact, a violation of whistleblower laws. It's also a material breach ongoing of the agreement that they have with DOJ. So that's where we're going to go, if you guys want to know. We're also going to talk about Brian Cole. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit amped up. Brian Cole Jr. of Woodbridge, Virginia, a 30-something-year-old man, autistic or developmentally delayed or both, who apparently confessed to the pipe bombs on January the 5th. Here's a problem. What if he was doing something else? What if the evidence was so thin that it actually could never stand scrutiny, which is why they didn't go to a grand jury? We're going to show you some of the initial reads that have been posted out on X and some of the internet researchers / video weaponized autistic man with an itch in his brain that he needed to scratch Armitage, who's been working with the Blaze. This story is going to fall apart. So I have a recipe for crow if anybody would like barbecued crow breast. I actually have that recipe. We're going to cover that as well. So we've got a bunch to cover today on This Morning. And I think that government narratives are going to fall apart, and that is just the way it's going to have to be, and we are going to be part of it. This show is only going to get more contentious. I'm sure we'll see more things. For whatever it's worth, I actually put some graphics that came from Armitage that he shared with me over the weekend. I put it into today's show prep, and then I went to go look at it just before we went live, and it was gone. It was completely gone from the computer, and I didn't delete it. I have no idea why it went away. I airdropped it to myself again because I had a backup, and then it is now loaded, and I hope, in fact, I'm going to double check it right now. There it is. Okay, so the graphic is there, so we'll get to that. All right, let's first do a sponsor. What we do here is we talk to you about things that are important. We also use your attention span, and we weaponize it against you to sell you things if you are so inclined, if you have the money and you are so interested in the product. We're always going to be very, very clear that I only am willing to represent companies that I would spend my own money on. And one of them is the folks over at Cove Pure. So let's start with that right now. I actually never cared about drinking water until I moved into Texas. My wife has always been the drinking water kind of person. She was worried about pesticides and arsenic and fluoride and lead and pharmaceuticals and PFAs and all the other kind of things that get in there. That was not really like a Kyle Seraphin thing until I moved into the hill country of Texas, where our water table has a significant amount of sulfur that they don't filter, and I couldn't either. And the water stunk. I didn't like the way it smelled. So we got ourselves a Cove Pure. We opened up a deal with them, and they've got a great little system. First of all, it's very easy. I've got a drip filter, and then I've also got the Cove Pure filter. The kids use the Cove Pure filter because it's so easy. One, it lets you do hot, cold, or warm beverages. That's pretty fantastic. If you want to make instant tea or instant coffee, you can do it right then. If you want something that's cold, it comes right out, and it's already been filtered, so you're going to get it, and it's already chilled in the machine. It's got size presets, so you can have weird shaped water bottles and not worry about your kids running overflow or pushing the button and leaving it running. That makes a big difference for us. And there's no plumbing involved. You literally just set it on the countertop, push a few buttons for about 15 minutes to get it filtered and flowed and get all the water moving where it needs to do it and get it all flushed out. And then it's ready to go, and it's ready to go for months. These filters last for a very long time. Some of them can last for up to 24 months from what I remember reading. That all works really well for me. But also, and probably most importantly, it actually certifies that they've pulled all the junk out of your water. 99.9% of contaminants. That's going to include those PFAs and pharmaceuticals and fluorides and leads and arsenics and so on and so forth. So if you want a gift for someone, or if you want to get one for yourself, this would be a great time to get it. They've actually sold out because we're doing such a successful job talking about their product, and they are so good. In fact, even one of the ladies who works for our advertising agency hit me up and said, "Hey, I listened to how you said you put it out for your kids." And I went like, "Oh, I should get one for my kids too." People are looking into this thing. They've actually sold out of their units. That's a pretty good indication of what quality that they have, and more importantly, that there's a demand on these things. So they've extended their holiday discount. This is the Black Friday deal they did. $250 off right now. Covepure.com/KYLE, covepure.com/Kyle, COVE pure, PURE.com/Kyle. Check that out. That's why we partnered up with them. And they're going to do this sale through, I think, the end of the month. And you won't see shipment until January, but you guys can lock in the deal because they basically sold out. They said, "Hey, let's keep this thing running." So if you're interested right now is the time to get it. This is the better deal that they've had since I've started working with them, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. That's what we have to say about Cove Pure. The link is in the show description as usual. You guys can scroll down wherever you're listening and find it there. We're going to get into a contentious show, so maybe you need a sip of water. Let's start it right now. All right, and contentious is where I intend to go, and contentious is where we'll be. Let's start at the very beginning. This is a letter that was sent over to my friend Steve Friend. It's the second letter from his attorneys at Empower Oversight. They represent whistleblowers and research. That you can be finding them at Empower with no E for some reason, EMPOWR.US. Dear Steve, on November 24th, 2025, we had a phone call with you regarding our advice that you are subject to the FBI's social media policies after you will return to its payroll sometime before October 10, 2025. As we indicated on that phone call, we would send you a follow-up letter outlining the FBI's policies in detail. On November 24th, we sent you a letter also clarifying the scope of our attorney-client relationship with you. And in that letter, we indicated, 1, the dispute with the FBI we helped you over the last several years has substantially concluded with a settlement agreement entitling you to back pay, even for the period after your resignation through the settlement date. 2, you seem unwilling to follow our advice on the matters discussed above. For everybody's understanding, Steve Friend, frequent guest of our program, the Friendly Friday guest star, has not received back pay, nor has the FBI or the DOJ substantially completed the terms of this agreement. So what I see in this letter is a set of attorneys, one of whom is a former Grassley staffer and spent basically his entire career working in deep state. If we believe that there is in fact a uniparty, I'm going to make the allegation, and I'm going to say it is my opinion, lest they decide to come after me litigiously, but it is my opinion based on all that I've seen, that Empower Oversight, who sent this letter to Steve Friend, is working with the current FBI for access or otherwise. And in doing so, what they have done is they have set themselves up to violate the duties that they would have to their client in order to maintain access to the agency that they may be able to benefit from in the future. And it fits everything that I know about these guys. I'm disgusted that they represent themselves as whistleblowers and whistleblower attorneys. Garrett O'Boyle is one of their other clients and did not, in fact, get the back pay yet. He hasn't got his leave balances yet. He hasn't even gotten the right health insurance, and he just had a freaking baby. These guys fell down on the job, and they called it victory simply because they got a press release. They're no better than Kash Patel. And in fact, it's my belief they're probably working with Patel, Bongino, take your pick, out of the front office from the FBI. That's Kyle Serafin's opinion. If you don't like it, deal with it. Your evidence is pretty substantial. And the other real problem with these guys is, early on, I already got sort of the uncomfortable vibe that they were not working for the right team when they approached me. And they said, oh, we've noticed that you've raised $600,000 for the guys that we represent. By the way, those guys are my friends. They're my former colleagues. Who the hell are these guys to pop in and act like they somehow have some say? And they said, listen, here's what we'd like to do. What we'd like to do is we'd like to ask one of our attorney friends to write a letter and to do some research to substantiate that Garrett O'Boyle and Marcus Allen can receive the money that you raised for them without any help from us, without any benefit from any political figure or anything else. You personally went out and raised money for these guys. And now you're holding on to that money. And we think we can get it to them. And all we need you to do is agree to pay us $25,000 up to that amount. We're going to try to get it for free, but just be aware, would you be willing to be on the hook for $25,000 of not your money, Kyle Serafin, of money that you got from people in $5, $10, $25, $100 increments? We had over 13,000 individual people give money to this fund. That's a lot. $25,000 was a huge chunk of it. And these guys asked me if I would be willing to cut them a check for 25 grand so that one of their attorney buddies would write a letter that would substantiate that these men could in fact receive this money and not be in violation of FBI policy. That makes me want to puke. Hence my comment to them that they were part of the problem and I'd like to see some attorneys hung from the bridges, which is not a very nice thing to say. But it turns out I'm not a very nice person when you look over and see that somebody who doesn't have a job, who has no money coming in, has family and little kids, and you're getting a nice, comfortable salary. Both the men that run Empower Oversight make about $200,000 a year. You're going to go over and find the pot of money and see if you can, get another jet ski for one of your buddies in Washington, D.C.? What is $25,000 of donation money? How about you put it up pro bono? Because it's the right thing to do. I spent my time for free, and I don't make that much money. I spent my time for free raising money for these guys. It was a really big deal. It was super important to me that my friends didn't go hungry. And they wanted 25 grand of the money that they had no right to. All right, we're going to continue on with this letter. Their issue with Steve Friend is that he's not abiding by the FBI's social media policy. Here's the problem. Steve Friend is not an FBI employee by any stretch of the imagination. He has no gun. He has no badge. He has no chain of command. He has no phone. He has no email address. He has no authorities. He has no security clearance. He's collected money from them because they put stuff into his his bank account, but he doesn't know what it's for because he has no access to his leave and earning statements, so he can't see a pay stub. He has no idea what they're depositing. He's told me that he's gotten 5 different deposits from the FBI, and every single one of them is a completely different amount of money. Why is it a different amount of money? Why has he gotten 5 different deposits? When you guys have a paycheck from the federal government, if you know anything about it, it's pretty much always the same unless you did some overtime, and that's not the case for the FBI's. They don't get overtime. They get what's called LEAP, Law Enforcement Availability Pay. So what the hell's going on here? They said that he hasn't been part of the social media policy. Imagine you work for a company, they've hired you on, but they haven't actually brought you in the door. Are you subject to their policies prior to them actually officially having a date of hire? He's had interviews. We've put him on the air, and he said as much, where they came up and they said sort of conditionally, if we were to hire you, the following things might happen at that time. Yeah, this is crazy. And it's not a coincidence that yesterday afternoon, with just a few minutes' notice, they asked Steve Friend to come into the office to do 0 things. He does not have a security clearance. He can't work for the FBI. And moreover, as a non-security cleared person in FBI space, he requires a constant escort by FBI policy, at least as long as I can remember. I'm not an FBI employee anymore either, and I don't know what their policies look like, but the way that it worked when I was there for all the years that I was, if you did not work for the Bureau and you did not have a Bureau background check on file, then somebody had to babysit you nonstop. So did they really bring Steve Friend into the office to tie up another employee full-time as well, just to keep him quiet from being on my podcast? I'm going to assert to you, I believe yes. And for whatever reason, the guys at Empower Oversight seem totally okay with being part of this. And that's disgusting to me. They said, we are withdrawing from any future representation on your behalf. It might slow or complicate the FBI following through. However, we indicated that if you would sign a limited representation agreement, we're willing to continue to represent you for the limited purposes of advocating on your behalf for timely implementation of the settlement agreement and back pay that you're owed. This is not a negotiable thing. This is what they signed up to do. This is what they've gone out and fundraised on. Do you know how many victory email these people put out? On December the 2nd, 2025, we informed you that we had an all-status call with the Department of Justice, and we reiterated that if you wanted to continue representation from us, that there would be a limited purpose that we've discussed. You need to sign an engagement letter with us that says that we can represent you only under the limited scope that we want to. Rather than signing it, you sent us a letter saying that you appreciate our continued representation for the purposes of advocating for your timely implementation of the settlement and back pay, which is exactly what they sent to Steve in the first place. However, you did not sign our limited representation agreement necessary for our continued representation. You indicated that although you'd received 4 deposits, you didn't have access to your employee personnel page, the EPP. You had no means of evaluating what those deposits reflected, if they were the right salary or interest payments for the back pay that you're owed. All of this is true. Steve has no idea what they're paying him for. Your letter requested that we forward the FBI's Office of General Counsel communications regarding disciplinary actions against you for perceived violations of DOJ media contact, which we did. And then they went on to say, essentially, that they're not going to represent Steve Friend. They fired him as a client. How crazy is this? We reiterated our previous request. Please sign this limited agreement to do the thing which was already the scope of our representation to you. Can you re-sign that we're only going to do what you said and what we said at the beginning and the outset? We just need more paperwork. We want to make sure we limit our scope because we've agreed that we're going to help out DOJ jam up Steve Friend. That's Kyle Serafin's opinion on this. Today, the FBI sent us the following, with the language in red responding to topics in black that we had raised. This is what they represented to the FBI. This actually is the most funny part of this entire thing. The FBI has straight up admitted that they are in material breach of the agreement that the DOJ made with Steve Friend, signed by the Deputy Attorney General of the United States of America, the number 2 over at DOJ, the person that is able to appoint folks into the FBI. And his attorneys took that as mission complete, we're done, and we're out. Steve Friend, no changes since last update. He does not have access to the employee personnel page, so he can determine if his leave and pay are in fact correct. The FBI said as of 12/2/2025, the employee's EPP account was reset. The employee will receive NFC email with guidance. Payroll unit was also able to notify employee, or will notify employee, future. So it's not done. Not complete. It's been reset, and we're going to send you an email, and we'll help you set it up in the future. Not done. Steve Friend most likely needs step increases and restoration of leave. As of 11/6, payroll completed all corrections to personnel action history and restored AL and sick leave. And as of 12/2/2025, the payroll unit confirmed the employee, I should put this all on the screen, confirmed the employee is not missing a WGI. The employee's last WGI happened on 6/5/2024 for the GS13.5 pay grade. And the next one will be in May of next year. Well, nobody can verify this stuff. That's the whole point. He doesn't have access to any of the portals, which is what the whole piece of the pie was. And by the way, they told him what his balances were, and they're not right. FBI employees at Steve's grade should be earning 156 annual leave hours per year. We're talking about multiple years. I think they said his balance was in the 70s, like 75 hours. He should have something like 400. Yeah, this is really personal to me, guys, because they pulled somebody off my podcast from Friday and decided to go after this. He has no health insurance. They want him to go into an FBI job where people wear badges and guns, where people wear body armor, and he has no freaking health insurance. As of 12/2, the employee submitted the FEHB beneficiary forms, so it will be processed with the effective date going back to September 19, 2022. He's already been paying out of pocket for this stuff. Are they going to reimburse him for his old? What is that all about? Reinstatement of his security clearance. Oh, that's pending a background investigation and adjudication. It's not done. All of this stuff is the requirement under the agreement they have. How about the payment of his back pay? As of 12/3, HRD has reached out to some other group for a status update, and they're awaiting a response. Back pay calculations are pending for all employees, which means it hasn't been done. They're in material breach. They were meant to do this in 30 days. They're over 100 days. They are now, about 70 plus days in arrears? They're behind. They owe him back pay and interest. And on 12/4, the Jacksonville management team reached out to Steve Friend and spoke with him. They explained the onboarding process, including bringing him into the office, getting him assigned a bureau vehicle, scheduling him for a firearms qualification. According to the Jacksonville management, he appeared excited about returning. Jacksonville is standing by to facilitate his onboarding when he's approved to FBI space, and that is not real yet. It hasn't happened. And so they fired him as a client December 5th. And then he got a call yesterday on December the 7th saying, now we need you to come back to the office to do nothing. This is retaliatory. Guys, you know they're going to come after everybody that's involved in this stuff. Given this positive outcome, this is Jason Foster, the founder and chair, and Tristan Levitt, the president. Given this positive outcome where you didn't get your back pay, you don't have health insurance yet, you haven't had the proper amount of leave distributed, you haven't had your security clearance reinstated, you actually have no job there at this point, we now consider our representation with you to be complete with regard to your reinstatement. Additionally, we're aware, contrary to our previous advice, you've once again publicly commented on FBI matters today, risking further adverse administrative action. This is where they lift their hand and they show you what's going on. Steve, you can't talk bad about the FBI, which is doing bad things and is not in good faith opening their coffers and paying you the things that they owe you. In light of your apparent unwillingness to follow the free professional advice we've given you. Oh, now it's free professional advice. We're even more convinced that our previous expressed inability to represent you regarding any legal matters other than your reinstatement is warranted, and we're no longer willing or able to expend further time or resources representing your interests or providing counsel moving forward. If you donate to Empower Oversight, I encourage you to give Jason Foster a call. If you don't have Jason Foster's number, go ahead and reach out to me. info@kyleserafin.com. Same story for Tristan Levitt. If you'd like to reach out to these people and you give money to this group, let me know. I'll put you in touch. Accordingly, this letter constitutes notice of termination of representation. Fired as a client. If DOJ or the FBI communicate with us further about you, we will notify them that our representation is concluded and encourage them to contact you directly. Would you like a copy of your file? By the way, this was a privileged communication between client and attorney, and the client raved that privilege to me. So we have been talking about it right now. Moreover, Jason Foster, Tristan Levitt, attorneys who are backing the work of brave whistleblowers. How about this? How about we find out whether or not Washington, D.C. wants to keep your bar license in check? Because this seems like a material breach of the agreement that you had. And firing him as a client so that you can jump in and keep things going up on your wall so that you and others can feel good about your associations with Chuck Grassley. Have you guys ever seen what Jason Foster did? There was Jason Foster on the screen. He's the founder of Empower Oversight, dedicated to enhancing independent oversight of government and corporate wrongdoing. Sure he is, as long as you play ball with the people on the other team. He was the chief investigative counsel for the Judiciary Committee in the Senate for almost 8 years. He was the senior investigative counsel on the Committee for Finance, U.S. Senate, almost 6 years. He was the senior counsel for the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs for 2 years. This goes back to 2003. And before that, he was senior counsel on the Committee on Government Reform, House of Representatives for 6 years, going back to 1997. Jason Foster has been swimming around in the swamp for the entirety of his time. Just saying. And here's Tristan Levitt. This is his LinkedIn. He's the president at Empower. He's a delegate in the West Virginia House of Delegates. He also worked for the Merit Service Protection Board, which is functionally useless and has done nothing for whistleblowers by his own volition. U.S. Merit Service Protection Board, 4.5 years rather, sorry. Office of Special Counsel, all of these guys. And then he was the senior counsel for Chairman Jason Steffetz, Cheffetz. That's the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Have any of those things ever functioned or done anything for anybody? Just say it. I'm going to put the chat up on the screen. I'm nauseated by this stuff, guys. These are swamp creatures doing swamp things, asking whistleblowers for money that should go to them so they can help out their other swampy buddies in D.C. When I said it, I'm going to double down on it. Some of these attorneys should be freaking hung. They should be left to just rot so that everybody can see their corpses rotting on the bridge, about to fall into the Potomac, and realize what an evil, nasty group of people are swimming around inside of that beltway. Doesn't stop. It won't stop, apparently. Nothing we can do about that, I guess. This retaliation is not going to stop. The fact that our scumbag helpers are actually just as bad, and the only thing they want you to do is shut up and play nice. That's what they wanted. Think about the best deal that they got for anybody. The best deal was Marcus Allen. They got it quickly, and it's because he kept his mouth shut. And the best deal was, we're going to reinstate your clearance as long as you agree to resign from your position and never work in that job. As far as I know, Marcus Allen still doesn't have a job. Testified in front of Congress. And who did they bring in? Just remember that. This was May of 2023. They brought in Steve Friend. They brought in Garrett O'Boyle. They brought in Marcus Allen. And where was that one really not very nice voice who could have been there? And, an FBI whistleblower that exposed things that are still ongoing. This guy never testified in front of Congress. You know who they brought instead? Here he is. Tristan Levitt. They brought Tristan Levitt in to talk because, he's one of the friendlies. He's one of the people that will play nice. He's one of the guys who's worked inside of our government in the Merit Service Protection Board, so he knows how broken the government is. Oh, does he? When was the last time his family went without food because of it? When was the last time his family went without a paycheck because of it? Isn't that interesting? The way they play this game is that they're looking at both sides' cards. And the people who have no money to go out there and hire long-term representation, they just have to trust that their attorneys actually have their best interest. Meanwhile, the attorneys are making backdoor deals and setting it up. Remember, when Kash Patel went forward and announced that FBI whistleblowers had been reinstated, hurrah! Who got the credit for it? Chuck Grassley. Oh, and who did Jason Foster used to work for? That's right, Chuck Grassley, back when he was like 90,000 years old and not 98,000 years old. Screw you guys, Empower Oversight. For some reason, you guys care about what people say on X. I'm bigger than you on X. I'm going to point out your hypocrisy. I'm going to be screenshotting this letter every single time you make a post. I'm going to turn the notifications on, and I'm going to hunt down your stupidity. I'm going to make sure your donors know that the guys that you went out there and crusaded for and acted like you were representing in great faith and you collected money on so you could pay your little bloated salaries for your ineffective representation, what did you do? Nothing. Did any of you guys get anything without this podcast continually embarrassing the current FBI director by proving he doesn't know what the hell he's doing? How many people has Empower Oversight gotten fired from the FBI for the previous sort of actions? None. And by the way, not once have they ever said, hey man, could we help you out with anything? The only thing they ever offered to do was get the story of me and Garrett O'Boyle out there to Tucker Carlson, and they failed. And they gave it to John Solomon at Just the News, that scumbag that works within the FBI's 7th floor, the guy that gets invited to meetings with the FBI and then goes out and acts as a mouthpiece on their behalf. Am I a little bit pissed about these guys? You damn right I am. Do I think the FBI is now in material violation of their deal? And do I think that they are engaging in public and continued retaliation against FBI whistleblowers? 100%. That's not my opinion. You can just look at what they've done. You can't bring somebody in for not a real job when they don't even have a background check. You guys can fact check me if you're an FBI employee. Let me know how many people got hired with no background check and are brought into the workspace so they can simply be babysat and kept off social media. They're going to put Steve Friend in a skiff today, I bet, if I had to guess. He's sitting there probably with no phone, no computer access, twiddling his thumbs, knocking out push-outs every 5 minutes, I'm guessing. When Garrett O'Boyle told you that they would crush you, that's what it looks like. It's long, it has absolutely no limit, and it will go forever. So, with that in mind, let me plug my buddies over at Patriot Protect. For the amusement of it, I was able to find Kash Patel's personal phone number because he does not obviously use Patriot Protect. If you guys want to protect yourself against people like me, just sitting here in the podcast chair, I found the mom and the grandmother and others that are associated with the alleged pipe bomber subject. There's a lot of stuff out there on social media and on the broader web. Just be aware. Patriot Protect is a way that you can scrub it. You'll have a harder time finding stuff on me than you will on some of these like elected officials. We'll see where it goes there. Okay, so that being the case, if you are not trying to be a victim of sniffing and chat GPT and data breaches and so on, there are ways that you can protect yourself. Signing up with the friends over at Patriot Protect will get you started. Patriot-protect.com/KYLE. It's patriot-protect.com/Kyle. Man, I'm having a hard time with that one today. The data brokers are publishing your stuff for free. People can get your home, your family, your habits, your age, your income, your online footprint. Take your pick. Scammers will use that to calculate everything about you, decide whether or not you are a profitable target. If you don't want to be an easy, low-hanging fruit, then you should check out my friends over there. Right now, Skip said he was going to offer something special. So go ahead and check that out at patriot-protect.com/Kyle. I think the name Kyle is the promo code that works to get you the deal. I think he said he's going to work out a better deal. Normally we do 15% off their annual subscription, which is an easy thing to do. I think he's got something better planned for today. So I'm going to actually let him tell us that in a second here. Let's go ahead and do this little segment. We booked this before we knew that we were going to get into this sort of craziness. So we'll do that real quick with Skip, and let's talk about, for a little bit, online scamming. And I think you're going to find that it actually has something to do with the end of the show when we get into more pipe bomber stuff. All right, so we're going to do a little guest segment with one of our sponsors, but also brings information on things that I do not know about, which is tech stuff. I wish I knew more. I used to be more of a kind of a nerdy guy. I'm going to welcome Skip Holt. He is the co-founder of one of our sponsors, Patriot Protect. And thanks for joining us again, Skip.
Always a pleasure, Kyle. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I mean, look, anytime I come on, it's not like I bring good news.
Right.
I mean,
that's the entirety of this podcast.
No, exactly. If you see me coming on, you know that there's something coming. There's always a lot of things happening in cybersecurity, and that's exactly why we sponsor the show, because it's very important what we do. And it's unfortunate. I would like to do other things with my time. It'd be great to be a park ranger or something like that, and be on the land. But unfortunately, all of these companies that we rely on or are made to rely on are continuously failing, being breached, being leaked, and it interacts with our everyday lives. And so every time I do come on, as you know, I don't want this to be some sort of infomercial. Like I want to educate people on the actual risks and threats that are kind of going on our everyday world. And here we are again with another host of bad things to report.
We got a couple good stories here. This is coming from TechCrunch primarily, one of the industry publications you've kind of turned me on to. We got 3 stories. One of these is going to be kind of relevant to the last podcast we did, where we talked about a guy who was driving around Washington, D.C., and he was driving for DoorDash, apparently. And so you sent me an article about DoorDash, and I want to get into what that's all about. Even if you don't use some of these companies, the odds are is you end up touching one of the bigger aggregators. So we'll start with a very specific example. And can you confirm at this moment, are you in fact wearing a hoodie in the dark? Just since that's what people are saying.
This is a live shot that we got here.
Very good.
It's perfect. Yeah, I'm not moving at all. I keep myself very still.
Yeah, he has a very good sort of hacker persona, so he kind of hides in the dark here. Okay, so the headline goes that DoorDash has confirmed a data breach affecting users' phone numbers and physical addresses. This is kind of you guys, your bread and butter. Maybe you can explain what the hack was, how it happened, and then what sort of vulnerability that leaves for people, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they were actually pretty tight-lipped about the actual nature of how it was breached here, and the other couple breaches we'll explain. But basically, they said that this is something that happened recently, and what was exposed was the users. Again, this is customers of DoorDash, names, email addresses, phone numbers, and creepily, and of course, this is the case with DoorDash, physical addresses, your home, where you are. This is and what they in their statement. This is where you get into their kind of very published by lawyers sort of explanation here, where they say no sensitive information was accessed by the unauthorized third party, and we have no indication that the data has been misused for fraud and identity theft at this time.
Right. No evidence exists at this moment. Can I read the other piece of it too? They said no social security numbers, government issued IDs, driver's licenses, or bank or payment cards information were stolen as part of the breach that they're willing to admit to.
Exactly, which wasn't the case anyway. And we know intuitively that we don't give our social security numbers to DoorDash, as why would you need that? But of course they say that and add it in there. It's like going to a restaurant and saying, that has a steak listed as gluten-free. It's like, yeah, of course it's gluten-free. It's a cow. Cows turn gluten into cow, and this is why we have beef. Anyway, but the point is it's again legalese and them grasping at straws to try to minimize the issue. But the issue is very real. The question is, when you put this information out there and offer it to a company that you're trying to enter into some commercial arrangement with, just so you can get your to get your burrito or whatever. This is the problem, is that scammers now have this information on the dark web, or up for sale, or aggregated somewhere in some way, and it doesn't matter how it can be used. And how it really works is whether the source of information that a scammer or a cyber criminal or somebody even worse is looking at you for, is they're casing you. And really what they're looking for is, who is the lowest hanging fruit? Let's look at the address. Let's look at if it's a nice house. Let's look at the demographics of the person to see if the juice is worth the squeeze. And then most importantly, they look at, is this person cyber secure? What are the vulnerabilities and exposures that I can use? Can I interpolate their passwords? Can I hack them? Can I get into their email account? Can I get into their bank details? And of course they look at low hanging fruit. And so the point, of course, of what we do, or anybody should care about, is make yourself a higher cost target for them to exploit. You don't want to. when they're going down that list, you don't want the scammers to look at you and say, there's something here. You want them to just move on and say, it's not worth it. Let's just let's exploit the suckers, basically.
You know what that reminds me of? Because it's Christmas and we do movie references when you and I talk.
I was just thinking about that.
There's that moment in Home Alone, the original Home Alone, where the creeps are driving down the really nice street and they're trying to find out like which houses have the alarm systems and which ones don't, and which ones have the automatic lights. So you're just looking like, what's the deterrent? And if they know that your automatic lights only turn on at one time, they're like, aha, they do it when they're not here. Automatic lights won't deter us. So the idea, just, a higher cost target might be, protected by ADT, or homeowner has gun and bad temper, or whatever it is that makes people not want to come into your house. Same kind of idea for your online persona.
Exactly. And so when you buy our service, you turn into young Kevin McAllister with mannequins dancing in the window to make sure that people understand that you can't come in to this house because it's full.
I like having the same reference things. Okay, let's do this other one, because this one is an aggregator, and I think maybe the Oracle breach is a little bit darker or potentially more wide-reaching for some folks. It says, everything you need to know about the Oracle data breach. I don't use Oracle. What do I use that Oracle is involved in, or am I related to this and all?
Yeah, great question. So again, Oracle, is a absolutely massive company that does basically, some of their bread and butter is like customer relationship management software. I mean, they really do a lot of back end. I think, they used or were the pioneers or invented, I can't recall, SQL, which is like a large data querying protocol. And of course, it has made the founder, Larry Ellison, enormously wealthy. Mm-hmm. And what happened to them, this is a huge issue, is a Russian-based hacking cohort, we don't want to call it, called CLOP, did a zero-day attack. What is a zero-day vulnerability attack? It is when they, of course, dark groups like this are constantly prodding and testing for weaknesses. Again, movie reference I think I did last time about the Jurassic Park with the velociraptors trying to find the weak points in the electric fence to get out. They're constantly prodding at it and seeing where there are vulnerabilities. And 0 day means that the owners of the software, in this case Oracle, did not know that there was this vulnerability. They had no knowledge of it. They weren't trying to work on it. And unfortunately, these hackers found it. And so this affected the companies that are to which Oracle is a vendor, and a list of the ones that you might interact with on a day-to-day basis, whether that's you're a customer, or you're a customer of this sort of thing, is Michelin Tires, Broadcom, an enormous internet company, Estee Lauder, if you're buying makeup, Humana Health.
I've been accused of wearing makeup, but it's not true. Milo Yiannopoulos said I wear
a
bronzer.
natural luster you have.
I just have these cheekbones. Estee Lauder.
Humana Healthcare, Fruit of the Loom. If your underwear might get hacked, we don't know. Canon printers. This was an interesting one. University of Phoenix. I mean, that's an enormous, private educational provider.
And I imagine that goes back all the way. Because they've always been an online university, so probably all their records are digital.
Exactly. And this is something actually that happened to Columbia University recently too, is that they were hacked. If you applied there, your information was leaked. It's just, again, and the list goes on here in this particular breach. But the point is that the companies that you interact with on a commercial basis, or you interact with a company on a commercial basis and they interact with that company, and your information is exploited. The point is, your information can be out there, and you ask the question of yourself, like, what am I doing to protect myself from these scams? Because the frauds happen, and I'm sure everyone that's listening is nodding along saying, yes, I know somebody that this happened to. And the question is, yesterday is the best time to do something about it. Today is the next best.
Sure. I always end up with these things, and I'm always kind of blown away that people tell me, they're like, hey, I've got a friend and this scam happened to them, and it was like X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm like, whoa, how did that even take place? But then, it can happen to anybody on their down day. It's happened with my own family, where somebody that, reached out and caught you when you're busy, you're doing something else. I actually probably got hit with with maybe a spear phishing thing the other day. Get an email, purports to be from X Corporation, which I use every single day. And it was like, hey, we flagged you as a potentially whatever. You have some language in one of your posts that's inappropriate, and we're going to put an advisory upon your thing, which will limit your visibility. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got to do a review of that. And I didn't even think that they stole the logo from X. They had it from some other thing, and they sent it off to one of my emails. Now, luckily, the email I have is not connected to the X account in any way, shape, or form, so it didn't do anything. But it's my publicly available, like, facing email. And so you look at it and you go, doggone it. Like, I almost got scammed there, and I had to send it off to the phishing thing that goes, it looks like this group's, what's it called? CLOP? CLOP? Or is it a zero?
It is. Well, yeah, it's zero, but yeah.
It's a stylized thing. And it says here that they've taken up to, what, $500 million? This is not small business.
No,
500 million.
That's the point. I mean, these are seasoned people that are doing this. I mean, I imagine that, the spear phishing attempt that you're describing is much more small fry or not. It depends. You're a publicly facing person, and so you don't know. I mean, on the other hand, we get, normal people get these things all the time, and it's even more scary than just getting kind of like a normal BS email that doesn't really make sense. Like when you get that sort of thing, that there is a human person on the other end of that looking at you as an individual specifically to try to, again, it's a business, cyber scamming is a business unlike, like any other, in which they are trying to measure their input versus output, their ROI, right? They want to target those. They don't want to waste time on somebody that's not going to be worth it. And so they try to target individuals, and there's a reason that they're targeting you. They think that they can exploit you. And so the important thing is having a InfoSec team on your side.
For sure. Also, the fact that it's affiliated with the Russians is always interesting to me. CISA has identified it, looks like, per this thing. And again, you don't even know who you're dealing with. Mazda was one of the things that was listed on their companies out there. So car companies, like the amount of data we're talking about, people forget. If you got an app, which I do for my Ford truck, now you realize it, like everything is connected everywhere, as much as I despise that. And I kind of wish I had one of those like pre-Skynet 90s trucks. Again,
of course.
I kind of miss it. But
just give me like a 98 S10 pickup with, 5-speed with just the smelliest carpets. And and just that's all you really
start
need.
it and no electronics whatsoever. I used to tell my wife that was the reason why I actually bought the first truck that I ever bought, which was a 91 F250. And she was like, it's got 2 batteries and 2 gas tanks, and you got to manually flip them. And why is that? And I'm like, I can start this truck in 4th gear, and I can get 5 guys to push it, and I can bump it into 2nd and drop it in there with no electricity whatsoever. And I got extra batteries. I got extra, diesel. Like it just goes. It doesn't hold anybody. It's, it's a single cab, but
yes,
it just works. So when everyone else is dead and they can't drive, I'll be driving like Sarah Connor through wherever I got to go.
Exactly.
I miss that world. We're not there anymore. Okay, so this is the thing. So some people think I'm dealing with smaller companies. I only deal with local businesses, blah, blah, blah. This one was kind of a little alerting. This is a fintech, which that sounds like finance, and a place called Marquee here home in Texas to me. What's the story with fintech? Or what's the story with Marquee, I guess?
Yeah, fascinating stuff. So again, this is a small financial vendor for many different, I think they say on their website, 700 plus banks and credit unions. And they, facilitate banking for a lot of these smaller regional banks and credit unions. And so, if you say to yourself like, hey, I don't do business with Chase or Wells Fargo or any of the large banks because I want it to be smaller. I want my money to feel more secure. I like it better. The reality is that for those smaller community banks to compete and still maintain their relevancy in an increasingly narrowing world as far as number of firms go in every single industry, they need to use vendors to allow them to compete at that level. And so they use vendors like Marquee. And there's, if I'm just reading through a lot of these banks, Alliance Bank, Erie Federal Credit Union, Guarantee Bank, Bank of California, there's a huge amount of just smaller banks that you would just never even hear of if you didn't do business with them.
I'm looking at this one. It says Maine Credit Union or Maine State Credit Union. I can't imagine there's a ton of people in Maine to begin with, and you probably think you're safe if you live in Maine because you're barely part of America at this point. But there you are, isolated up in the hinterland, and yes, you're still going to be doing business on the web, it seems.
Exactly. And so this was another 0-day attack. So this was, they didn't know, that the company didn't know this was a problem.
Hmm.
And as of this week, again, this came out a couple days ago. 400,000 people so far confirmed affected by the data breach. And again, that is with 100% certainty going to increase, as you know, because firstly, they want to minimize the scale when this happens, when the news comes out. And secondly, we just know by the nature of this, it's not like the hackers are out there saying, "Hey, we just figured out another, tranche of 400,000 customers." That's not how it works. And so they're just hoping that this goes away and they can remain, salient as a vendor. But the point of this is that between the DoorDash thing, which affects, an enormous company that keeps buying up smaller, food delivery services, between the Oracle thing, which is just a behemoth on a scale that we can't even like really understand, and then this, which is to say, a smaller effect, but for those that want to get away from the larger companies to interact with, it doesn't do it. The point is, this in our modern world, this isn't the 91 F-250. This is the app controlled new world, and the threats are all the way out there. It's no matter where you look, you can't hide from this. So the question is, what do you do about it?
Well, is there a requirement for companies to report this stuff? Is there a requirement for government to report it to anybody? Just so is there like one of these compliance emails that says, "Oh, you may have been hacked," or is that sort of best practices? What governs all that so people even know if they're even getting hit with this stuff?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and this happens too.
Because I imagine they don't want to tell you. If they could tell you, if they can't tell you, if they don't have to tell you, they probably wouldn't.
Exactly. I mean, they could. Okay, I'll give you a good example. There's a company, I can't recall what it was, but they tried to hide it, and they got nabbed by the FTC. But think about this: they, like every company, is asking themselves, what is the cost for going legit and getting out in front of it and losing customers and all that stuff, versus the potential 5-year long litigation that we might get into with the FTC or the DOJ or whatever that might result in a fine. They contract with large, white hat law firms to see what the exposure might be and what the fine might be based off of other precedent. So the answer is, yeah, they have to, but will they? And what they do is a business case. They try to do it. And in the meantime, who's the victim? You, us, the people that have no choice but to get their burrito, delivered to them.
You're just a calculation on whether or not you're going to cost them more on the coming or going. It also looks like they're getting people coming and going with these actual attacks. There's a ransomware. Almost all these things seem to be ransomware now. So they're charging to release the systems back to the people that run them, and then they're also selling off the information that they stole. Am I getting that right?
That's exactly correct.
That's
awful. Exactly correct. Because so that's the point, is that with these ransomware attacks, the business model for the hacker is to say, we're gonna capture, encrypt, and shut down, X amount of your data. And if you want to have business continuity or get it back, here's the Bitcoin address, and you can give us $700,000 or whatever, and we'll release it, or not, or release it. I don't know. So that's one piece of the business model. The other one is, we're going to capture all this data, see how we can monetize it, and there's basically nothing you can do about it because you left this 0-day exploitation available, in your software developers or vendors or whatever didn't patch it, and that's on you. So there's a lot of different. Again, we really should think of these as business models. And then they have your data. They have in the case of DoorDash, your physical address, your phone number, and email address. And then Joe Pesci might be driving by and taking a look at your house and saying, "Hey, this is worth it to do a break-in," or I think that we can get this guy's password to his Chase account or whatever, because he's got a nice house in the Chicago suburbs. And that's how it works.
That was very consistent. The other guy's name, I can't remember what the actor's name was, but his character was called Merv. Do you remember that?
I see his face.
I see his face too. I could see his head burn too after he got hit with the blowtorch.
That's a good one, in the basement.
Okay. So people want to get themselves squared away. They want to get that. I do get way less robocalls than I used to, which is the easiest thing that I can see. You guys always talk about that in your ads, so that makes sense to me too. And I've got a way more public profile than probably everybody else. I got 400,000 across different platforms of followers, and so I have to imagine I'm making more trouble for anybody than, and I still have a pretty low instance of people trying to screw with me. Even the publicly available emails are not generally bothered. So there's something to say about that. It's true.
I mean, look, when you sign up, it does make a difference. And even when you do get a robocall or a scam call or something like that, we call it it's like a blank. It's getting fired at you, but there's nothing in there. And just one last one. In the hunt for Red October, Captain Ramius steers into the torpedo before it can arm, and then it just crashes against the hull and nothing happens. That's what when you sign up for Patriot Protect, the service is to make sure that you get in front of all this stuff, take away the ammunition that the scammers can use to get against you by removing your name, your address, your age, your phone numbers, your past workplaces, your relatives' names, taking all of that off the internet so they're ungoogleable, to make sure that when you do get one of those robocalls, that they don't have this whole dossier of information against you, because that's, why have it out there? It's insane that it is out there. In any functioning, legal system, it would be illegal to have these companies.
Yeah, it costs
do
nothing. I mean, I'm telling you, I found the and I've told this to the audience before, but I found the director of the Secret Service's private address, his phone number, his email address, his cell phone, and they were talking about people, getting swatted and government officials, and I was like, it's really easy for some of these people, and I used to do this for a living, so I've got a little bit more skill at finding it, but I go find people's stuff very easily. And it's a lot harder to find me now than it used to be. And whenever I get a threat now, I get a death threat, it'll always be from like a place I used to live and I haven't lived for a while and I don't really care. I just go, yeah, have at it, man.
Honestly, Kyle, that absolutely warms my heart to hear, to know that.
I like getting death threats on places where I don't live. That's
and let me be clear. When I say it warms my heart to hear that you've gotten a death threat, what I mean is,
I actually kind of think it's kind of like a sport for me too. And I'm like, I always respond to them too. I'm like, hey, don't send anybody you want to get back. Like, come on at me. But also I don't live there. So that's also helpful. It makes me have a little bit of peace of mind with my kiddos, because I do have some little ones.
Yes.
All right. So people missed the Black Friday deal, so they're a little disappointed, but it's still a relatively inexpensive service and they can sign up with your thing.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, we've been, listeners of you have been hearing us in our name for almost a year now.
That's right.
And so we wanted to do something a little special for your folks, for those unfortunate folks who have not signed up for Patriot Protect yet. What we'll do is, for this week, we'll make the promo code Kyle count for 50% discount on the annual plan. Which is
Black
huge.
Friday, the Black Friday delayers, like I did that on one of those things. They can catch the second run of the Black Friday deal.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, this is just going to be for the folks that listen to you. And I want to make sure, again, for everybody that does business with any of these companies, if it's one of these, or if it's going to be a breach that we hear about next week, and unfortunately, all we do at Patriot Protect is listen to this stuff and just shake our heads and say, like, we can't do anything about that, but we can arm people, normal American consumers, with something to do about it. We give you, for literally like $5 a month. And actually, if you do the promo code Kyle this week, it'll be like a fraction of that or whatever. Yep. A whole InfoSec team at your disposal. Just make sure make sure you're doing something about it, because I feel bad for those that don't.
It's probably, by the end of it, about as much as one burrito on DoorDash. My buddy was telling me it cost him like $40 or $50 to get a burrito because he didn't meet the minimum, and so that's what it cost his corporate credit card.
I only hope that he was full of bourbon at the time and just needed that. No,
burrito. he was working at InfoWars. I don't think they were worried about it too much. It was kind of funny, but it is a thing. So there you go. For the cost of a burrito one time on one of these services that may leak your stuff, you can get that covered for the year. It does make a difference as far as I could tell. So again, I'm an N=1 like anecdotal story, but I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you jumping on and explaining some of this stuff. This is definitely not my cup of tea, but nice to know that everything is always going to be a risk and that we are living under Skynet.
Listen, firstly, it's always a pleasure to come on. Always a pleasure to talk to your folks. And I can, with 100% certainty, say that next time I'm here, there's going to be some more bad stuff to talk about.
Outstanding guarantee. That's what we like.
Yep.
All right, bud. Skip, thanks for coming on, and I hope you have a great week.
Likewise.
All right, thanks, sir. So there you go, folks. Nothing but bad news as usual, but not a bad deal. And also, he's a good guy. Skip's funny. I love that he always has a really good movie reference for me, and we always have a couple of them, and so we're going to add a few more to the repertoire. Okay, so what does that have to do with anything? We had deep state lawyers decide to screw Steve Friend over the podcast we did about a pipe bomber. We just talked about data breaches and things out there, including a DoorDash scenario. This is the only way my brain weaves it all together. And then lastly, wasn't the guy who got arrested for the pipe bomb allegedly working for DoorDash at that time? This data that they soak up when they get these leaks, it's not just necessarily even what you can see. I was talking to one of my buddies the other day, and he uses Uber, and he was like, I look back and I've got 2 years worth of Uber information. Sounds like DoorDash will give you access to 2 years deep worth of orders that you made. I have a plea for you all, since I didn't hack DoorDash. And I don't have access to all the DoorDash. Somebody in Washington, D.C. ordered Chipotle, or I don't know what it is, whatever, some food. What else they had there? Kava? Maybe Kava? The Mediterranean thing? Somebody ordered food in Washington, D.C. on January 5th and received their food between 7 and 9 p.m. on January the 5th. And I'm going to bet that somebody out there in Washington, D.C. got it from a guy named Brian Cole Jr., a guy with 60% torso, 40% legs, a guy who has glasses and has kind of a weird affect and drives a 2017 blue Nissan Sentra. You guys want to bet? You want to bet that the FBI ran down the wrong guy, but they decided to do what they did anyway? That they decided to silence Steve Friend, that they decided to continue pushing forward on a case that likely they already cleared in January, February, or March of 2021. You want to bet on that? Anyone want to take that bet? Because I don't think you should. I don't think you should. It's not the only thing that's going on. This is another sort of instance of deep state stuff. I just want to cover it because for everybody saying this FBI is different, people are being held to account. Are they though? Y'all? Really? United States federal judge temporarily blocks the evidence used to dismiss the Comey case. There's this nonstop ongoing disaster area. Federal judge temporarily barred prosecutors from using the evidence seized from a key figure in the dismissed criminal case against former FBI Director Jim Comey. You think the deep state doesn't take care of its own? Daniel Richman, it's a law professor, former attorney for Comey, filed a lawsuit in the District Court, District of Columbia, alleging that prosecutors violated his Fourth Amendment right by seizing material from his electronic devices during an investigation in 2019 and 2020. And in granting a temporary restraining order on Saturday, District Judge Colleen Kolar-Cotelli wrote that Richman is likely to succeed on the merits of his claim that the government violated his Fourth Amendment right by retaining a complete copy of all records on his personal computer and searching that image without a warrant, which is two problems. Problem number one is the ongoing statement that our FBI has absolutely no interest in doing things by the book when it comes to probable cause. Their regular violation of the Fourth Amendment in the national security sphere bleeds over into the criminal side. It has to, because the same agents who have the same charter to do the same type of work will occasionally be able to come up with something. They work national security and they were able to find something on a FISA or a 702, which is like FISA Lite. Oh, and then they just happen to be able to build a criminal case on you, knowing where they went, even though they shouldn't have gone there. Interesting. This is going to be another one of those things that gets tossed out. So for all the people like, oh, who are the deep state gangsters that have been prosecuted under this particular administration? Who? Jim Comey and Bolton and Letitia James and some of these things are shut down. Comey's going to walk. Is anybody talking about Chris Wray? Apparently Chris Wray's FBI, if you want to believe that it was his, which I don't. I think it was Paula Bates. But Chris Wray's FBI was apparently responsible for failing for 4 to 5 years on the pipe bomber case. That seems truly problematic. Does that not bother you guys as well? Okay. Let me encourage you to to listen on Spotify, if you're just listening to us and you don't have chapters, if you don't have video as an option, why not check us out on Spotify, and KyleSerafinshow.com is the easy way to get there. The reason I say that is because maybe you find a topic that's not interesting to you and you want to jump ahead. Spotify does AI chapters, which are pretty great. And you can get that as probably the best way to get the recall. By the way, we are 1,000% increased this year since we started using Spotify. If you're not on Spotify, check us out on Rumble, check us out on X, check us out on YouTube. Rumble and YouTube are the only two that are monetized there. So if you care about supporting us, it doesn't cost you any more to watch on one of those platforms. I really appreciate if you did. And that's the easiest way that you can show us a little bit of love. We get a little bit of ad revenue out of those things. We also get ad revenue out of Spotify, and you may hear an ad from them right now. Again, it's KyleSerafinshow.com. Very easy to find us. If you want to support what we're doing here and just thumbing the eye of the sort of deep state gangster clowns that are out there, the status quo types, follow us on Locals. It's KyleSerafin.com. Otherwise, make sure you have liked this video, bump us up in the algorithm, leave us a comment, like it on YouTube, like it on Rumble. All of those things push us up. We've got a great chat over on Rumble, which you guys have probably seen. That's on the right-hand side of the screen. On the left side, which I can't integrate because Rumble kind of sucks when it comes to playing well with others, you've got our YouTube chat, and they're also active and bumping along, and that's been really cool that you guys have started doing that. We have gradually increased linearly to the point where at some point we may just blast off over on YouTube. But for all of you that are the early adopters, you guys are in the first 20,000 subscribers to this channel. So congrats on you. You found the Kyle Serafin Show. We're really glad you're here. And I am not done yet. We're going to do pipe bomber stuff, shall we? Feel like we should. There's other things going on, immigration stuff, MTG going out against it. Let's start with this. I went on a couple of podcasts. I think I did Redacted. I'm pretty sure. Who else did I do? I did Clint Russell's show, Liberty Lockdown, which is sneaky good. I really like Clint. I've always liked Clint. We've talked a few times offline, and I think we've done 2 interviews on camera. I'm a big fan of the way that Clint handles business. By the way, he's a great listener, and he did therapy. I actually owe him probably a therapist bill from talking to him on the show that went out on Saturday, because I must have done 95% of the talking for that show. And I appreciate him doing this. Let's talk about why this is relevant. This map right here is the area in question. You'll see D Street mid-screen, and it goes east and west. Okay, 2nd Street Southeast on the right-hand side, that's going to be the far east boundary, and that goes north and south. And in the vicinity of, and it's bordered on the north side by C Street, what we are looking at is the complex that includes the DNC and the RNC. And I think I actually have a map that may be a little bit easier to see those things because they're flagged. Let's see what we can do with this one here. Okay, this is the flagged area. All right, so this is where I used to work. There it is. The FBI's Washington field office. It's over here. And you'll see this north-south road. If you're just listening, I'm pointing at 395, the interstate that goes right through the middle of the heart of DC and right past the National Mall. Over here is the complex for the Capitol. This is the National Mall area. You got like the Lincoln Memorial over here and so on. Okay, we're going to zoom in on where these green flags are. Can you see the green flags? You will shoo. Here we go. Okay, green flags coming on in. Okay, they're at the bottom of the screen. Let's put them right in the middle. Green flags represent a few key places of interest. One of them, the Capitol South Metro Station. That's where the Capitol Police officers, the CSU teams, parked. It's also where Person of Interest 2 got off and walked around and made a beeline over to this flag. Oh, Freedom Madams. There you go. This green flag over here is the RNC. That's the Republican National Committee. That is where one of the 2 pipe bombs was found. We believe that even though it was the first one found, it was the second one placed. And the Democratic National Committee is over here, and I'm just showing you on a broad map here. This is Canal Street. This is New Jersey, which cuts right through the middle of the map. That's what I was looking for. And it goes 2nd Street to the right, 1st Street, and then you get over here to South Capitol Street is going to be the boundary line next to the DNC. Remember all those things as we switch back to this map where you are looking. Closest to me is going to be South Capitol Street. Furthest from me, 2nd Street. Just below where you can see on this map is going to be 695, which eventually feeds into 395 and goes back home for Brian Cole, who I believe, based on what his grandma said and all available evidence thus shown to me, was probably actually just driving and didn't drop the pipe bombs. I'm saying it to you right now. I don't believe that he was the guy that dropped the bombs. I think the FBI got the wrong guy, and I think they know it. How's that for an assertion? Is that wild? Share this stream. Share it with your friends. Let's break it down real quick. These are the critical hours that are going to be of relevance. At 7:10, according to the complaint that was filed for his arrest, Brian Cole Jr.'s vehicle, a 2017 Nissan Sentra, which they do not describe any further, but it actually is pretty easy to find. His Nissan Sentra was seen on a license plate reader with Virginia plates, and it was captured driving south on 395. Okay, and I'm going to show you what his car looks like because that's the kind of guy I am. Allow me to reframe this thing real quick. This was taken from Google Earth. This is publicly available. I'm going to, let's see if we can cut out a little bit of the address stuff. There we go. Stand by, folks. I'm just trying not to reveal anything that doesn't need to be revealed. Not that you couldn't find his address very easily, but here it is. This is Google Earth, parked out in front of his neighbor's house. If you're looking at Brian's house to the right, and then the first open parking spot on the circle there in this little cul-de-sac, that's his Nissan Sentra. It's a 2017 with factory wheels, and it is going to be relevant because somebody knows that they had a DoorDash delivery that came to them with that car. That's my belief. And I'm betting that it can be proved. Okay? Here's why it's relevant. Here's the time frame. 7:10, apparently he's driving south on this road, which we are going to zoom out on. Here we go. Here, let's go. 7:10, he's driving south here. And he took the exit to get onto this South Capitol Street Southwest, okay, which would take him into this general vicinity. That's where he drove by. And that's it. That's what they have for his car, as far as they've told us so far. My bet is this. This is Kyle Serafin's speculation extraordinary. I think that the FBI grabbed all the 186 phones that pinged in the area in 2021. I think they ran them all down like they said they did. Some were exempted. 51 of them were exempted for being law enforcement. No clear why. 30 plus were actually flagged for interviews, and a bunch of them had some follow-ups, like 90 of them had some follow-ups. And then I think they identified Brian Cole as a guy who was generally in the area. And then they went and they alibied him and found out that he was not the guy. This is my strong belief that Mr. Cole was not, in fact, implicated during that time. Okay? Here's some really interesting stuff from Armitage. Armitage is the internet researcher slash video editor analyst who spent more time in the CCTV footage room than anybody that I can be aware of. He's downloaded all the videos. He knows where all the cameras are. And I reached out to him on Friday after the arrest of Brian Cole. And I wanted to explain to him something about pings. And I'm going to explain it to you as well. This is worth clipping for those of you that want to clip this and use this for historical understanding of what the hell we're talking about. The FBI, let me put the search warrant up here on here as well. Okay, or not the search warrant, sorry, the complaint. Let's go to where they talk about. This is the complaint that was filed. Let me show you at the top of the screen so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, the affidavit in support of criminal complaint. This is the one that was used to go after Brian Cole and the arrest. They give you the background of the pipe bombs. We're just doing a quick recap here. They talk about identified on surveillance footage. They identified a subject, but not Brian Cole definitively, certainly not by what they've put in this criminal complaint. This is not the entirety of it. Couple things interesting. Identification of Brian Cole Jr. Let me tell you what they think is important. He's 30 years old. He lives in Woodbridge, Virginia. That means he's in the local area. He's 5'6", which means he fits their height estimate just barely. And he wears corrective glasses, as though that were important. Why was that important? Because the pipe bomber is seen cleaning glasses on the video footage. He lives in a single family house and he works in the office of a bail bondsman. By all understanding of this guy, it sounds like he is a person who has low functionality, but brilliantly enough. And let me say this very, very clearly as well. It sounds like his family has taken care of him, despite the fact that in many situations he would not be able to thrive. That he probably wouldn't be able to hold down a job, and he likely would not be able to find gainful employment. And he would be either on the street or like a ward of the state. But this family, despite being left-leaning from everything I can tell, to include the fact that here, let me show you how left-leaning they are. Here's the grandma. Her name is Loretta Cole. She's been quoted in multiple places. I found her on Facebook. Easy enough. There is Brian Jr., as they call him, with his grandmother, okay? The only pictures that she has, in fact, the only reel that she shows on her Facebook account is with this person, and that is the first openly transgender state delegate to the Virginia House in Virginia. That is a wildly left-leaning thing, and this woman is there in support of this left-leaning Danica Noam dude who is a man dressed up like a lady. So I think they are clearly on the hard left. But in the way that I can find commonality with many people on the left, they care about their family, just like I care about my family, just like you care about your family. They are pro-life in that way. And rather than leave Brian Cole Jr., a man who has apparently either an autistic-like nature, maybe it's undiagnosed, but has a serious inability to process regular things, they didn't just leave him to the state or kick him out on the street and have him live somewhere. He lives in his mom's basement, and he's taken care of by people who love him, and he has a job that gives him purpose. And apparently he also was working for DoorDash, delivering food, which is a nominal thing. Can you follow the GPS coordinates? Can you drive to the place? Can you take the bag and hand it to the person? You don't have to collect any money. Can you do those things? Great. You now have purpose. You're not a ward of the state. You're not wandering around homeless, on drugs, getting into fights with bums and things like that. And there are plenty of people in Washington, D.C. that have that. So God bless them for taking care of this guy and for keeping their son in a mom's basement. My dad and I had this conversation the other day. He's like, that used to be a relatively common phenomenon. If you had someone that failed to launch that just didn't have the ability to survive on their own, parents would take care of that part of their nest. They would hold on to the person. They wouldn't kick him out into the world and say, it's your business. Good luck. They would make sure that this person got fed and clothed and had purpose and love and went to church with them and so on. That was a real thing. And for those of you that have special needs kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You may have them through their entire adulthood. God bless you for taking care of them. Regardless of this woman's politics, which I probably don't agree with, I do absolutely stand behind the instinct to take care of your offspring and your lineage. So good on them. Okay. They point out that he lives in the basement. Why is that relevant? Because they also basically leave it there. He worked for a bail bondsman, but they didn't say that he did any 1099 work, and we're told by the grandma he did. That seems very relevant. That seems like a potential alibi to me. I would have wanted to run that down, and I'm confident the FBI probably did. That's going to be my belief. Then they go out and lay out a bunch of things that he bought. What they don't say is that these are the only things that were bought on those days. And I want to highlight that as well. He bought pipes that were 1 inch by 8 inch. I have some in my garage. In fact, what I'm going to do for those of you that are regular watchers, and you know that I kind of have like things behind me on the wall. If you've never watched the show, you're missing out, but we have a really cool little background here. I'm going to actually put some random pieces of 1 inch pipe and some end caps that I happened to find yesterday when I was looking for some connectors and some hooks. I just have them in my stuff. I apparently have a pipe bomb in waiting. I definitely have 14 gauge black and red wires. I certainly have connectors to 9 volts if I need to, multiple different connectors for various different types of items. Apparently I've got all the stuff I need. I've even got carbide bits that would be able to drill through galvanized steel. Does this guy have a drill press? Those were really clean and neat holes for those of you who saw the pictures. Anyway, I'm going to put some random pipe behind me just for the hell of it, because I used to always use it for who knows what. Let's go back to that document here. What they didn't say, but they kind of allude to, is that he went out and just bought like 1 inch by 8 inch galvanized pipe of a particular marking. But they didn't say whether he was buying other things that made sense. Did he buy some floor flanges to go along with it, along with the end caps? Did he buy some connectors or some joint works or some 90-degree angles? Did he buy some elbows? What else did he buy when he was buying this stuff? Was there a reason? Was it gas line? Was it water line? Was it some sort of project he was running where he just wanted to run and do a mouse trap? Was it something where he was going to put marbles down it like my kids might? I don't know. Neither do you. We don't actually have the details, and they leave that out on purpose. Because if they only if he was only going to a store and buying exclusively pipe bomb making materials, I can pretty much guarantee you that would have been part of the affidavit, because it makes it a lot stronger if somebody goes and purposely buys only bomb making stuff. But did he buy other stuff too? That seems like it should be relevant. Then we're going to get down to the pings, and I want to blow your minds with some ping stuff. Maybe you don't know anything about pings. So let's talk about it. The FBI obtained historical cell site records. Let's just hone in on this. They are associated with cell towers in the immediate vicinity of the RNC and the DNC for the relevant time period of January the 5th. Let's go to our infographic. Here we go. The towers that they identified, they have multiple towers, and each of them are represented by the lines that you see on the screen that are colored. 1, 2. Is there a 2? I feel like there is a 2. Maybe there isn't. Oh, 2 is blue. It's dark blue. It's hard to see. So 1 is right in the middle of the screen, and then above it, that's at like 395. Above it is going to be 2 and 3, and they point roughly, one points downward south, and the other one basically goes east. And then you've got number 4, which is over on the east side, but it points out to the west. And then 5 kind of turns around a little bit, and it goes far. It's farthest one on the east, but it points kind of like north and west. Okay, so 4 and 5 are both kind of west pointing things. What they say is they grab a sector that is roughly 120 degrees. That's a third of a circle. And the way that it works when you have historical cell phone pings is that whatever data you have, that's what you get. There's really 2 ways that pings work, and I wanted to explain that for people who don't know. In law enforcement, you can get a warrant that will give you what's called precision pings. That's actually a misnomer. They're not that precise a lot of times. And so we can actively ping the cell phone you have, unless it happens to be in a Faraday bag like mine is right now. If they were to have a ping, have gotten pings on my phone, then they can actually indicate like, hey, right now I want to ping the phone and see where it is. Where is Seraphin? Oh, he's on a Wi-Fi network in his house. Got it. Where is Seraphin? Oh, he's hitting this tower and it's a Verizon tower or it's an AT&T tower or whatever. So you can ping it actively. The problem is the more you ping it, obviously the more that you're giving data back, and that means you can burn out the battery. So you don't want to have it like constantly pinging in real time. You're just hitting them to do spot checks on where the person is. Where is this phone hanging out right now? That's active pinging. Historical pings are something completely different. And by the way, active pings are regularly garbage in Washington, D.C. We would have pings on phones where we were supposed to go do surveillance, and our accuracy degree of uncertainty was 10,000 meters. 10 kilometers, 5 miles square would be where it could be, anywhere in there. What pings are really good for showing you is where someone is not. It doesn't always show you where someone is. I can show you that someone is probably, or their phone is probably in Maryland and not in southern, Virginia. That's pretty good. But is it going to show me specifically what building or what street? Not necessarily. So that's worth knowing. When you start dealing with historical pings, we're talking about something altogether differently. That's wherever the phone interacted with fill in the blank tower, and it could be anywhere in that cone of uncertainty, and there's no one there actively pinging it, so you're just looking at whatever incidental contact the phone had with various towers. And sometimes it's great. In rural areas, it could be pretty good, especially if you have a couple overlapping towers. In urban areas, it tends to be garbage. That's just my experience with it, having searched for people using this technology. Now we go back to the Armitage bit. And this is going to be fascinating to some of you. Look at what we have here. Position number 1 in the middle, dead center of the screen, is where the pipe bomber was at the time that they indicate for ping number 1 and the hit on tower number 1, which is outside of the area that tower number 1 covers. Now, maybe there's some bleed over because occasionally you get a little bit wider or a little bit narrower than the tower is supposed to have, but that seems kind of problematic. Number 2 shows very deep into the cone and on far off to the right. Number 3 looks like the ping is actually almost outside as well. This is what we're looking at in the middle here is the pipe bomber route. And then the towers are all outside of the route to greater or lesser degrees. This is not a precision move. Look at tower number 4 and ping number 4, right on the edge. So they're actually banking more on the error ratio of being outside the 120 degrees than being inside. Or, more probably, they ran this lead to ground in early 2021, and there's probably a file in the FBI Sentinel that says that this guy was ruled out for variously good reasons, and they didn't pursue him any further. And today's FBI decided, we need somebody, we're going to give Dan Bongino something, and we're going to run it down right now. You guys want to see what that looked like? Because they seem like they came up out of nowhere from a historical file. I think the FBI had this guy in their back pocket because he was never a good choice. But they're going to try to play it on you. And that's why they said they're comfortable with their subjects and they're still gathering more material, which is complete nonsense, as I broke with Steve Friend on Friday. Nobody gets arrested and then we sort of think it might be the guy and we're pretty comfortable with it. You better have a freaking slam dunk when you go do a federal arrest warrant. This is not like a half-ass game. There's a reason why there's an over 90% conviction rate. This is Dan Bongino talking about how when he got the message, it was nothing new, except it sounds like it was something new. He said it on Hannity that they just did good old-fashioned police work on the old data set. And this one says they had something new. Well, which one was it?
To solving the case.
Dan, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I was smiling at you because I certainly remember the moment. Darren remembers it too. He said, "Are you sitting down?" Called me on the phone. I said, "Oh boy, why? Is this bad news?" And he said, "I think we got him." What exactly that tip was, we're going to have to pass on that for right now while we're still, obviously we're in the prologue of a long book. This is just the beginning. This This is not the end of the investigation, as you all well know, having reported on these for a long time. There's interviews to be conducted. The search warrant processing scene is not even done. So we're at the early stages. So that's the only reason I hesitate to tell you what the exact tip was. But yeah.
Okay, so it was a new tip, is what he said. A new tip. Are they going to get their story straight? Here's Kash Patel. He did a victory lap. He said, we want to praise all the people that work at the Washington field office. These are the same people, by the way, that coordinated the efforts against the J6ers. Interestingly enough, the same prosecutor that's going to go after Brian Cole Jr. is the same one that went after Enrique Tarrio and had a role in Michael Flynn's prosecution. So those people still work there. When I say that the deep state always wins, it doesn't matter whether they're coming after Steve Friend or Kyle Seraphin, or they're coming after some unknown guy who just happens to live in his mom's basement in Woodbridge, Virginia, where they're doing the right thing and keeping him out of trouble. And they're giving him function and purpose. And the FBI probably cleared him. If I had to say it, I feel pretty confident saying the Bureau blew it. And by the way, I'm not alone. If you're in the FBI listening to this right now, you think the same thing. That's why you're listening. How many of you have thought that and said it to your colleagues? This guy looks like a passkey. This looks like a fall guy. This looks like bullshit, was probably more likely what you said. Because nobody believes what these guys are saying. Here's Bongino. Remember, he just said, I was the guy who quarterbacked the effort. Bongino owns this arrest. Kash Patel went out and praised it and took credit for it and wanted to tell everybody what a great job they did and how they did something that no one else did. He also gets to own it. Pam Bondi was part of the circle jerk in that little press conference. She gets a bit of it. And so does Judge Janine. So we've got them all there. Now, you're not going to care about it, but so does the ADIC of the Washington field office, and so does the ASAC that was in charge of the squad. Those are all people that you're not going to necessarily be that interested in, but they also should own a piece of this. This should be a career ender. This is what I think happens when you do Richard Jewell. And here, before I go to the clip of Dan Bongino telling you something different than what he just said at the press conference, allow me to say this. Richard Jewell found a pipe bomb and then was accused of placing the pipe bomb. They ruined his life, and he died in his 40s from the stress of them destroying his life when he was, in fact, a hero in that scenario. There's a big difference between what goes on with Brian Cole Jr. and what happened with Richard Jewell. And the difference is we have social media, we have all of you out there, and we are completely independent from any media organization. We don't have to run the narrative, and I'm not going to. And neither are my friends who are researching this, who work for an independent media organization that have been properly reporting on the pipe bomb scenario for a while. You're not going to get a chance to just not have anybody ask you questions, because I can see the inconsistencies in the same day from these guys. Remember, I'm not going to tell you what the tip was. Well, what was the tip? Sean Hannity wants to know too.
Is you did not find any new evidence. It was all there, had been there for the longest period of time. The only difference between you and Director Wray and the Biden DOJ is they did not prioritize it. Why? And I know it wasn't easy to solve, but you did it in 8 months.
Yeah. Sean, I don't know what the hell this prior leadership team was doing outside of, targeting political opponents, weaponizing the FBI, destroying its reputation, embarrassing agents that are doing really good work out there, catching terrorists, CCP spies and everyone else. It's almost like they were intentionally trying to decimate faith in institutions. It's horrifying. I don't know what they were doing. I can tell you what happened, though, when we got there, the director and I. My first meeting, I swore in, and I kid you not, probably 15 minutes later, and the people who are in the meeting know, I said, when I get in there, I want a full brief on this pipe bomber case on day one. And I looked at the case agent after getting a full brief on what they'd done, and they had done some a pretty extensive amount of work. They had chased down, I think, thousands of leads, 6,000 plus interviews had been conducted, hundreds of tips, and it still was relatively stale, the case. And I grabbed the case agent on the way out, and I said, "You're going to get me this guy. You're going to track this guy down, and you're going to find him. You're going to get me this guy. I want him."
Yeah, so they gave him somebody on Dan Bongino's birthday, as I'm getting reports from people on the security detail that they're packing his house up and moving him down to Florida so he can go out on a win. They showed this B-roll footage at that time. Armitage, who's responsible for that graphic that we showed you of the towers, where they do not align very perfectly with the pings. In fact, I think they are relying on the margin of error. Also had an interesting insight on this video clip. If you're just listening, you need to go to Spotify so you can kick in. Otherwise, Rumble and YouTube are your options, and our timestamp is roughly 1 hour and 28 minutes in. I'm just looking over at my recording clock here. Okay. There is the pipe bomber taking off glasses, it seems, and cleaning them. And then leaving them on as somebody walks their dog next to them, keeps an arm up, and then pulls the glasses again after the person is out of watching distance. Now, the assumption has always been that these would be prescription glasses. But Armitage made an interesting, let's say, observation. And I want to make sure I have this thing on loop right now. So stand by 1 second, folks. Let's loop it. There we go. The story is like this. This is Armitage's belief based on human behavior. If you are wearing glasses that allow you to see better, as someone who used to wear prescription glasses before my eye surgeries, I know about this. When you can't see, when you have fogged up lenses, it's awful. It is absolutely atrocious. So you might take them off and clean them on your sweatshirt or your hoodie, and then you put them back on. Let's say you cleaned them, but it wasn't good enough, and it was a smudge. And your whole goal of wearing those glasses is to see better, right? And if somebody is walking up on you, you might take them off again and clean them again because it doesn't matter, because the glasses' purpose is not concealment. The glasses' purpose is actually enhancing your vision. So you could clean them, see you didn't do a good job, take them off, clean them again. He does something different, this bomber, whoever it is, maybe her. Takes the glasses off, cleans them, sees someone coming, puts them back on, waits till the person leaves, then takes them off and cleans them. And Armitage's observation, which I do not have any major holes in, is that the glasses then seem to indicate that they were there for deception and concealment, not for better view. If you had sunglasses meant to conceal your appearance and they were fogged up, their primary goal is not helping you see. In fact, they do the opposite of that. They actually just conceal your face. So whether you can see out of them or not see out of them, your goal would be to make sure that your eyes are blocked out so people can't see you. Isn't that right? Check the logic on this. Prescription glasses that are not darkened are meant to enhance your vision. Sunglasses that are worn at night are meant to conceal your person. And wouldn't that be interesting? Because we know that there was blurring that was done by the FBI, as highlighted by Dan Bongino, of all things, that they actually blurred that out. And if they were sunglasses at the time, that could make it real easy. They definitely are lenses. The question is what sort of lenses? Are they prescription or otherwise? And I think this is an interesting human observation in so much as this is a series of human observations. And what we don't have in the probable cause statement that the FBI put out, which is very specific, they do not say that they see this man getting out of his vehicle, dressed as such, going on the route, and then going back to the vehicle. So what are the odds that this guy is running a DoorDash, as the grandma says? That he was out there doing his side hustle. And this is the report that came out on Friday after the hearing. DC pipe bomb suspect Brian Cole Jr. appears in court for the first time, weeping with female kin, and they cry out, "We love you." Not, "You're a terrorist," not, "We're done with you." The scruffy Red Crocs loving suspect accused of planting homemade pipe bombs outside the DNC and the RNC ahead of the January 6th Capitol riot shuffled into the courtroom for a brief hearing on Friday, while female kin wept and cried out to him, "We love you." Brian Cole Jr., 30, who is allegedly copped to the crime to the investigators, was hauled into the D.C. federal courtroom for the first time since his arrest Thursday to officially hear the charges against him, and he faces raps from transporting explosive devices across state line with intent to injure, kill, or damage property to malicious destruction by means of explosive material. Those are the two charges, that 18 U.S.C. 844, India, and Delta. Family members, 6 of them, showed up. They declined to comment. At the end of the roughly 10-minute hearing, 2 women in the group cried out from the courtroom gallery in tears. I've been in that courtroom. I've been in that gallery. They said, "We love you, Brian. We're always here for you." He showed up with a scruffy mustache, wearing a khaki jumpsuit from the jail. He only spoke to the magistrate judge, who asked him standard questions, including his understanding of his rights and his highest level of education that he completed, which was high school. Okay. This is a judge who handled J6 rioter cases. There's this indication that the guy's lawyer is already trying to put Cole underneath a J6 pardon based on the wording in the executive order that Donald Trump put out. And apparently he's already confessed to it. Here's the victory lap right there. We see it. He faces up to 10 years in jail for the first count, 20 years for the second count, if convicted. It's going to be very interesting to see. Who is it? And what kind of deal might he get? Imagine if they gave him time served or probation only. and let him go with nothing and a guilty plea so they could close this thing out. A buddy of mine reached out and said that was his concern. We have a dishonest operation going on right now, run by people who are so desperate and thirsty. They need to see somebody take the fall, and they pick somebody. And my guess is that there's probably a file in the FBI's computer system that showed the reason why they didn't pursue this guy any further, because this is basic police work. This is basic FBI investigative work. This is not that hard. A bunch of historical pings, which were identified in the area. We're already told they identified all the phones. And then you just run them down, and then you do the interviews. So why didn't they go and get him in January, February, March? The idea is because what? It didn't fit the narrative? Sorry. I don't buy it. I don't. It doesn't make any sense. Especially because it doesn't explain why a Capitol Police officer counter surveillance team was able to find the pipe bombs in 11 minutes and 7 seconds from the time they got out of their vehicle. Right? We're going to go back to this again. The person that dropped these bombs disappeared off camera for a solid 8 minutes on foot, somehow appeared out of nowhere with no vehicle and no easy place to pinpoint where they started, because vehicles are a really great sort of target of opportunity to be able to trace. You think the FBI doesn't have all of those 8 minutes? They should. If they don't, why don't they? Why did they not share them? 734 pops up on camera, walks around, goes up First Street there. Sorry, that's not First Street. What is that one? Let me look real quick. Rolls up the street on New Jersey, and rolls along to D Street Southeast, cuts out to the west, goes down, drops the bombs, returns as came, disappears for a few minutes in the vicinity of Folger Park, and then rolls up past St. Peter's Church on Capitol Hill, on 2nd Street Southeast, and then rolls over to the Capitol Hill Club, places the palm behind the little dumpster that we're familiar with, and then disappears at 8:18. No more camera surveillance. I really hope the FBI doesn't have like something else that they're trying to not tell us, because what they're telling us is super thin. And what they've been telling us for 5 years is super thin. And if their historical pings are the entirety of it, and they don't have video footage of him getting out of a vehicle, a blue Nissan Sentra, do they have footage of this vehicle where he gets out of it and is carrying the backpack, wearing the shoes and the hood? Because that's a lot closer to something we can believe. It doesn't prove that he was the one driving it. And a cell phone ping is not something we can drone strike. It just means that somebody's phone was somewhere. People hand phones off all the time, especially when they're trying to do criminal activity. But we're supposed to believe that the super spy spent 5 years evading the FBI, spaced out his purchases for 2 years prior, even before the election ever took place. And somehow he's a Trump supporter, despite the fact that his grandma is a rabid left-wing politics fan and supports the first transgender dude woman dressed up in the Virginia State Delegate's house. And somehow this guy's a big Trumper, and he lives in his mom's basement as a big Trumper, while mom and grandma are like politics of the other side, and whose dad was represented by Benjamin Crump. That's what they want to sell us? Just tell me if you're buying that. I'm just saying, put it in the comments. Tell me why you buy it. If you think that we're going to discover something is totally amiss later on, you can let me know that too. Because this ain't it. These are the towers one more time. Now that you've seen it again, that little area where it says number 1 in the middle of the screen, that tiny little square area is where the walking happened for the pipe bomber. And those large V-shaped open arms with different colors are where the towers are picking things up. And anything in that sector could be the right thing. This is not a slam dunk for pings. A couple of purchases that almost everybody that I know that's a regular dude has in their garage, and many of you have let me know as well. That doesn't do it. And when Steve Friend and I punched a bunch of holes in this and showed how ridiculous it was, and Tom Massey, congressman who's been doing the investigation on this, who's been working, sitting down and talking to the Blaze about some of the shenanigans that he thinks that the FBI is involved in, and the fact that it should involve the United States Capitol Police in some way, shape, or form or another, which this guy doesn't seem to have any connection to. Tom Massey shares our podcast, and the FBI calls Steve back in despite not having a job for him, and his attorneys said that they're no longer willing to represent him. That's how deep this kind of stuff goes. Do I think that these are unconnected random incidents? Absolutely not. And neither do you, if you're being honest, because that's crazy. Why would this law firm with Chuck Grassley staffers and people who have worked in the federal government and completely rely on access to people who have power to be able to get donor dollars to be able to pay their full-time salaries. How do those people, how do they suddenly decide that they're not going to work with Steve Friend anymore, who's been the most effective of the people that they worked with? He's been the loudest. He's been the most aggressive along with me. We're the guys that laid on the barbed wire so the other guys could get their jobs back. By the way, other than Garrett O'Boyle, who has still also not gotten his back pay, who still also doesn't have the proper leave balance, the other guys that were on that list, they are also not being made whole. I'm going to leave their names out of it for right now, out of respect for their sort of like quietness is keeping them a little bit safer. But the FBI has not fulfilled the agreement with the 10 whistleblowers that they were meant to. And they want them to shut up. And God forbid, Steve Friend, who is clearly not an employee based on having none of the actual things that make you an employee. Most importantly for the FBI, a background check is a required qualification. It's the reason why I don't work at the Bureau. It's the reason why I knew I was fired from the minute they pulled it. It's like, okay, well, I don't have a background check. I can't do any work anymore. I can no longer come and do my duty. I don't work for you anymore. The fact that you're not paying me is another piece of it. To start paying him when they can't even say that they should be paying him because they don't actually have the background check done yet is in and of itself incriminating. And calling him into work to do nothing is retaliatory. And I expect that there'll be some legal process along with that. If not, there should be. And if you're a congressperson who's listening to this or your staffer who's listening to this, guys, your job is to protect whistleblowers, period. They're allowed to come to you. If you ever want to see things, you better make sure that you set a better example than what you've been doing. And I'll give you one last example of how I know they're not. And this is going to be really bad. One of the reasons that many people know me is because of this thing that they called the Catholic memo, which was a document that was produced in the FBI's intelligence sphere, which essentially claimed that radical traditionalist Catholics, a term that they made up, citing the Southern Poverty Law Center, were potentially white supremacists because they like the Latin Mass. I'm paraphrasing a bit. It's one of the things you guys know about me. Check this out. Tell me the deep state does not win. Local FBI special agent in charge appointed new state public safety secretary. And there he is, Stanley Meador. Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger has appointed the current, he's not the current, he's retired, the former, they got this wrong, actually that's funnier, special agent in charge of the Richmond field office, Stanley Meador, as the Commonwealth's next Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. He was the guy that should have been the buck stops with me in Richmond, Virginia, where the memo was drafted that went out there, where the intelligence product was drafted and signed off on under his leadership, his management. This is the guy who should have taken the credit the fall, but he was standing behind Kash Patel early on. Why was it? Why did they put this guy, who Patel probably didn't even realize who he was, standing behind him while Patel's saying, let good cops be cops? And now he's going to be the top person for public safety and homeland security under the new former CIA Abigail Spanberger when she takes over as governor of Virginia. You guys good with that? You tell me that the deep state doesn't always win. He's had a long career in public safety, starting as a special agent with the Alcohol and Beverage Control Authority starting in 1997. Amazing. He was promoted to a supervisory special agent at FBI headquarters in 2013. And he spent a bunch of time doing that. And then he moved out to the resident agency in North Carolina. He got named top cop by a National Association of Police Organizations. Became the ASAC of the Philly field office in 2019. 2020, he was the chief of staff to the FBI deputy director. I'm just going to try to figure this one out. If he was the chief of staff to the FBI deputy director in 2020, that would have been, what did I tell you earlier was in charge? Who was in charge of the FBI? Not Chris Wray. Paul Abate. Paul Abate, a BLM sympathizer, 100%. We're going to go get all the a-holes that were involved in January 6th, that guy. And in 2021, he was put in Richmond. And in 2023, they signed off on this memo. The rest is history. I exposed it. What's the cost? Nothing. He just got named top public safety and homeland security secretary for Virginia. So good luck, Virginia. That's what you guys are dealing with. Meanwhile, one of your citizens right there, is likely a person who has already been cleared by the FBI but was arrested for something. We didn't have a lot of clips today. I don't feel like we need them. I think we're telling you exactly what you need to know. I'm pretty troubled by this. I'm not going to let it go. I don't intend to. I'm sure I'm going to be doing more news hits about it this week. If you guys didn't watch the interview, the timeline, the breakdown, check it out. I did it with Viva Frey. I did it with Clayton Morris over at Redacted and Natalie. And I also did it with Clint Russell on Liberty Lockdown over the last couple of days. It's been a busy weekend for me because of that. We've been out there running it down. So this is not over. I'm pretty confident we're going to find out that the FBI lied about it. The only question I have is what's going to happen then? What do we do when you find out that your FBI, this FBI, the new FBI, or whatever the hell they're calling it, was 100% complicit in setting somebody up simply to be able to get any connection possible away from the U.S. government? Just saying. All right. Follow us over on Spotify, KyleSerafinshow.com. Like us on the channels if you're watching Rumble, YouTube. If you're watching on X, consider going to one of our monetized podcast video locations. We'd appreciate that. We just don't get any credit for YouTube or for X. So, it's a good platform for a lot of things. It's just not great for video for us. If you want to help us out, you can also go over to locals. It's KyleSerafin.com. And if you want to make sure you're going to the best listening experience because you want to be able to switch between maybe audio and video, KyleSerafinshow.com. Go to Spotify. That's where we have it. Follow us over there. We've had a massive increase on there. We were one of the top 1% of all video podcasts, and we had a huge growth, like 1,000% growth over there in the last year because we've started going hosting on that. End of the day, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channels where you can. Let's break through the 20,000 mark. That's our next sort of like thing over on YouTube, and like it so you can boost us in the algo. We're very appreciative. I got something that's kind of like uplifting and positive. This is one of my favorite dudes on YouTube. I've been watching him for literally years. I was an FBI agent, and I was like, if I need to teach somebody how to carry a gun for the first time, I send them to the Warrior Poet Society and John Lovell. John Lovell talking here about marriage, which is not something that has to do with guns per se, but it does have to do with asserting force in the world. I think you guys will appreciate his take on marriage. This is how I also sort of see things. It comes from a very benevolent, but also sort of dictatorial statue, which I think is a Christian perspective. Enjoy this. It's a little different than what we talked about today. Just something to kind of cleanse your palate.
My wife is not in charge in my house. I am. And she is my helper, and I'm not her helper. She doesn't wear the pants. I do. Now, because I adore my wife, I want to model the sacrificial leadership of Jesus. Jesus, recognizing that all authority in heaven and earth had been given to me, stood up, took out his outer robe, tied it around his waist, knelt down and washed his disciples' feet. That's what the biblical account is. Recognizing he had all authority, he got down and washed feet. I am in authority over my wife. It's not a 50-50. The buck stops with me. I am the head. Because of that, I'm going to use my leadership to take wonderful care of my wife. Boys, my sons, this is our woman. We're going to take care of her. She doesn't open doors. We open it for her. Our job, my job as a man, is to make sure my life is harder than hers.
That's good.
I want my life harder than hers.
Yes.
I make money. I'm going to spend more on her than me. I'm going to lift her up. I'm going to serve her. I'm built stronger so that I can use my strength for my bride. I'm going to exalt her. I'm going to do something better than 50-50 or equal. I'm going to lift her up. I'm going to treat her not as an equal. I'm going to treat her as more important. And I'm going to steer our marriage as well. I'm going to set the culture for our home. And I need her to give me her valuable insight. And sometimes we're going to disagree, and I'm going to go with what she thinks. And sometimes I'm going to go with what I think, but I'm going to use her as my helper, as my second self on mission for the Lord, because I desperately, desperately need the counsel of my wife, and I honor her in that.
If that hits for you guys, it hits for me too. I like it. It's a reminder that there was a way that things got done, and we're not doing those. But what we do know is that for many, many, many years, as long as men were doing that, we kind of kept the lies of our government at bay. We really did, because at least we could control what was happening in our own household in a meaningful way for ourselves and our offspring, for our spouses. We kept the evil outside. I think it's come in. I think they've been lying to us for a very long time. And now they're lying even to the point where it disrupts some of these family units in the ways that they're meant to run. That's my perspective. You could disagree with me. Put it in the comments. I appreciate all of you guys. I look forward to a very interesting week where we are going to thumb in the eye of the government authorities that I think are lying to us. And I don't say that for clicks, and I don't say it because it's fun, and I don't say it because it actually brings me any sort of joy or pleasure. It actually does the opposite. It is exhausting. I wake up every single day going, good God, what are they going to screw with today? And how are my kids going to go out there in the world and experience the America that I grew up in some degree of bliss? My kids already know that the government lies. They already know the names of the people that are lying in our government. And that sucks, because I've got a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old that are more versed on politics than many adults who actually pull the lever and get to vote. Ain't that something? All right. See you guys again tomorrow. Support our sponsors. Like the video. Adios for now. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.